Hello, revolutionary thinking. I have a treat for all of you who've ever wondered about what happens down under. I have a friend from the autonomy course. His name is Colin Dixon, and he is a retired science teacher in the Australian schooling system, was in the Australian schooling system. And Colin, could you go a little bit into how you became a teacher?
Oh, well, I'm quite old now, so I became a teacher out of Melbourne University in 1980. Did the 4 year training prior to that, a Bachelor of Science degree in mathematics and physics, then a 12-month diploma of education, and then I started as a graduate teacher in 1980 and taught in Queensland in a grammar school for 3.5 years. That was quite good. The system was working quite well in the early 80s. Then I spent 3 years in a really rough government boys' school, technical college actually, they're called tech schools, where it was they were basically students not heading for university, they were heading for apprentice. And I left in 1986 to start my own IT computer business. And then I was a self-employed businessman for the next 23 years. I then returned to teaching in the end of 2009 and taught in a maths class years 8, 9 and 10 in a disadvantaged area off Perth, Western Australia, where we had the children of the local bikie gangs and long-term unemployed, and it was a different world 23 years later. The education
Mm,
system, the textbooks were the same, but that was about all that was the same.
mm.
It was quite different then.
I see. And when you were going to school yourself, it was nothing like what you're seeing right now.
No, well, I did my primary school and high school. I think I graduated from high school, just stuck to the school in 1975, and I went through the math science stream. So in my last year, it was called Form 6 back then, I did pure and applied maths, physics, chemistry, biology, and had to do English, which I didn't spend much time at. And so I just did the straight math sciences, learnt to, with physics, you have to learn to think critically and think logically, but I was pretty unaware of how the rest of the world operated and was just heading for a career in science. So
Hmm.
I've become much more aware of the education that I received. I was in the top 5%, and for the top 5% of students, even now in the school system, for the top 5%, the system tends to work reasonably well. If you want somebody who gets to be very good in one area and totally unaware in many other areas. So,
I
but,
see.
but at least back then, the system worked somewhat because you did what the teachers said. That no longer applies, of course.
I
This age
see.
of being politically correct.
And let me ask, when you were going to school, did they ever teach you about money or finances or budgeting or relationship maybe skills or kind of the skills that you need to be a functional adult once you get your degree or your diploma?
Oh, well, back then it was clear that you go to university, get a degree, get a good job, and get married, buy a house, mortgage the bank, and work your guts out until you're 65, retire, and have a happy life. That was
Mm,
the basic plan,
uh,
and as it's always been.
I see. But what about kind of life skills, learning about money or about like job interviewing skills? Were they in the curriculum at your time, or no?
No, no. I was very good at calculus and quadratic equations, graphing and solving problems. Um, I got those skills down pretty pat,
Ah, okay.
but I couldn't write a resume because I was in the math science stream. The language skills were not taught.
I see.
Even
So the subjects were really like stratified. You know, one the sciences and the English wouldn't mix. The sciences and maybe the psychologies wouldn't mix. Math and English wouldn't mix. They were all kept in their own little sections.
Oh, definitely, yeah. You were math science, um, or um, you were humanities, but it wasn't even called humanities there. You were English, history, geography. They were the only three things in the humanities area. Or you were sport orientated. There was PE. Or you went to the trade areas where you did shop, which was metalwork and woodwork, and there was art.
Ah, I
So
see. And these art and shop programs, are they still going on, or have they slowly been phased out?
they've been diversified. So um, now, if you're in a school in what used to be woodwork and metalwork, you might be doing making jewellery or um, making fishing rods, or you might be doing photography, or there's all sub areas of that.
Mm-hmm.
So they're still there, but they're not seen as the main thing. We've got everybody's being pushed into the university system because you need to get a university degree, and they're not looking at the smaller certificates and
Like
diplomas.
more technical subjects.
Yeah,
Uh,
look, we've got haven't got enough people going in to learn the trades. Most of our plumbers, electricians, older guys in their 50s and 60s are getting to retire, and they
uh,
can't kids to come on and take apprenticeships.
I
People
see.
want apprenticeships, but most of the kids aren't suitable for doing apprenticeships, and they're not prepared to work for what they're worth, which is probably $5 an hour, because they actually create more work than they
Well,
a lot of the time. So
well,
most of the trades don't take on apprentices.
here in the States, we are heavily propagandized to go into an academic route, even if that's not where our heart is at. Even though that's not what we want to do, we're just kind of cajoled into doing that. So it would seem that it's the same thing where how's it in Australia as well, in most of the English speaking countries.
It is, but that's unless you're dumb, and you get labelled dumb, which is about
So
half the
they
students.
stigmatize.
Yeah, well, they stream. So they put the best kids who get the best marks on the tests go in the A class. And then you have maybes in the B class. And then you have the D, E, F classes. And the D, E, F classes, which is at least 60% of the school, know they can't get into any of the good university courses. And the good university courses are the ones like engineering, medicine, the areas, probably some of the sciences, because there's two categories of sciences, of course. You've got the physics and chemistry, which are the hard sciences, and you've got the biology and the um, health sciences, which health sciences are borderline because if they're heading in towards the medical area, there's jobs there. But if they're heading into the environment area, um, where they're doing the climate, whatever, um, there's um, they're not science. They're a propaganda type course, and you come out you being a useless individual because you can't think.
Got it.
So
It's not
that's
very
that.
practical, is what you're saying.
There's no job. Yeah, there's no. You come out with a skill set which is well. You come out a damaged human being, in my opinion. You come out with such a chip on your shoulders and believing it's like being into a religious cult where
Hmm.
your God and your Allah is the demon climate change, and you get all emotional upset when you come across somebody who actually questions your religion. So,
Right, but
so the
but
people,
the schools should be concentrating on making functional human beings to know how to be self-reliant and to critically think, and it looks like it's doing the opposite. It's making them dependent, not able to critically think, and to have an emotional reaction to most things they hear without doing much thinking.
not most things they hear, because they don't hear most things, because they're all
Mm,
in their own little tunnel where they're um, hearing the same thing all the time to reinforce their misconceptions.
hmm, sad.
And unfortunately, the people that do the hard sciences, the physics and the chemistry, don't end up in education. They'll end up out in, we've got a big mining industry over here where we export a lot of iron ore and coal and different minerals and so forth. So a lot of the hard science people end up working in industry,
Hmm.
and soft sciences, your biology and your climate and your environmentalists, end up back in education teaching.
Got it, got it. So,
So,
so
like, I'm a math science teacher trained in physics, so I'm very
got it. And so, I mean, you have a lot of you've shared a lot of horror stories in our autonomy course about what really
yeah.
goes on when you were teaching and kids would misbehave, they would mistreat each other and they would mistreat you, and it seemed like the administration was just sitting on their hands not doing anything, and instead of alleviating the problem they were exacerbating the problem, if I'm correct.
Yeah, well, but what we're dealing with is a schooling system. It's not an education system. The purpose is not to educate and to teach students how to think. It's to school a person to teach them what to think and how to react and how to feel about things. It's to teach them that the most important thing in the world is being sustainable. It's to teach them that humanity is a curse on the earth, like a virus that needs to be exterminated. And everything we do that I would call progress is not sustainable and damaging to the environment and not to be done. So we've got a lot of people in Australia. We've got the election coming up next weekend, and if Labor, our um, our Democrat left-wing party over here, get in, which it looks like they will at the moment, they're 51, 52%, so they're slightly over halfway. Um, we're likely to close down our export industry, which funds our country. Our biggest export is coal, and we've got a major coal development up in Queensland that's been trying to get off the ground for 8 years, and they won't open that coal mine. And that'll have offshoots, and the investors will just walk away from Australia and go get poorer quality coal from other countries and burn that. This is an Indian company that wants to buy coal to burn in India, because our black coal is a clean coal with a high caloric value, so it produces a lot more energy per tonne, which actually means it'll probably produce twice as much electricity for half as much carbon dioxide as the brown coal they can get closer by and cheaper for, but they have to buy our coal. But it looks like we might be keeping it in the ground, foregoing that revenue, sending our country bankrupt, because it's our biggest single earner. And they'll miss out on getting a good product at a good price, all
Hmm.
because of a fallacy, and that this is a bad thing when it's a good thing for humanity.
I got it. And when did you start realizing that like things were starting to get a little crazy and rowdy when you were teaching? What was it, when you were in Perth, or did it happen way before that?
Oh, it wasn't a different thing. It was an instant thing. Um, I left teaching in 1986, and I
Mm,
returned in 2009. In
mm-hmm.
'86, I was, how old was I? 20, around 20, 28 years old. At that stage, I was married and had 3 children. I'd left teaching and I went to work in IT. And teaching wasn't a problem for teachers at the time. Students did what you told them to, basically. And you taught, I was teaching maths and you taught people basic skills, and that was fine. Kids in my classes, you had good students, you had A, B, C, D, E as always, but most students did most of the work and most of the students passed. When I went back in 2009, it was totally different. The students did the work if they chose to. If they didn't do the work, they didn't have to. But if they didn't do the work, it was the teacher's fault.
Hmm.
So if you contacted a parent and said, your child's not working, the response was, well, you're the teacher. Why isn't my child working? You're there to teach maths. Clearly it's your fault. What do you want me to do about it? I can't come and sit in the classroom and do your job for you. That was the typical response from a parent.
I see. But still, was the work ever made applicable to the child's life? I don't know what grade you were teaching, but a lot of students have the complaint to the teacher that, when am I ever going to use this when I get out of this school? So, were most assignments applicable to everyday life, or it was just
Assignments are a geography, history, English, and they're not a maths thing. You don't do a maths assignment. In
mm,
maths, you sit down there with the textbook and you do a lot of problems. And at
mhm,
the end of the month or a 6-week cycle, you do a test to see if you've learnt it. So maths
mm,
is a pretty straightforward subject. That's the basis of it. You can
got
run
it.
assignments and projects and make it interesting, and get there and cut shapes out and build shapes, and you can do things that the kids enjoy that are a bit of fun, and use your manipulatives and play cards and discuss probability on cards, and the numbers,
Mm,
how a deck of 52 breaks into 4 times 13 or 26 times red and white and things like that. So you can look at the mathematics of cards and things like that. Mathematics is a fascinating subject and it can be a lot of fun.
yeah, of course.
But everybody needs their basic skills, and most of the kids coming out of school, well, even down in Australia, most adults, they'll talk about
Right,
maths is
right.
not relevant. I say, well, you probably, I'm in a table now with 5 people. I would say to be lucky that out of those 5 people, adults, no more than 2 or 3 of you could tell me straight away in your head what the answer to a half plus a third is.
Right.
Can you do that? There's a spot there. A half plus a third.
A half plus a third. Well, you got to find the lowest common denominator first. So that's
Shouldn't be that hard. It's grade 5 work. And
oh,
look, most people can't think if you've got an orange, right? And you want to
right,
cut up, and you can cut up and give me a half of an orange.
right,
And if you
half,
want to give me a third of an orange, that's easy, isn't it?
right.
Have an
You're
orange with 3
missing,
parts, right?
right. You're missing,
So if you've got half an orange, 180 degrees.
right, half, right down the middle. I know
Yeah,
that part. And then a third, it's like that's 1, that's 2, that's 3.
yeah, that's correct.
So
Yep.
right. So then
So a half a circle is 180. You know that 180 degrees.
right, 180 degrees, and then
So
a
what's a third?
third a third is 90, because
Uh,
that's kind
no,
of
no. Think about
oh,
that.
okay. Okay. A half
It's okay.
plus
Look. You've already told me
so
enough.
so 0.5 is a half, and a third is something repeating.
Uh,
That's what I know.
yeah. So you're a victim of the schooling system. That sort of stuff. Back 100 years ago, every student in year 5 would have been with me on that discussion. Every student at 9 years old would be
Mhm.
comfortable with, in their head, working with those shapes and be able to think of blocks of a half plus a third. And I could teach you that now in about a 20-minute lesson.
Mhm.
And you would then understand fractions and understand them well. But the way we teach them according to Common Core curriculum in the schooling system, taught by 90% of the maths teachers in the education system today who do not have a maths background, who
Mhm.
themselves are, are, are maths disabled.
Mhm.
Maths is a language, and the majority of people in Australia and the world today are maths disabled.
Mm.
And that 90% of the teachers that teach maths are also maths disabled.
Right. So when I said the lowest common denominator is a
You're on the right path, but
right
that's a process. But
is
you don't.
6.
Yes,
Right. So it's 5 6 a half.
yes.
Right. Yeah, yeah. So that's but how can you get that out of an orange? 5 out of 6.
Well, cut the orange in half.
Mhm.
Then if you've got the orange, if you had a separate orange, you cut it into 3 pieces, like
Right.
120 degrees. By the way, a third of the orange is 120. The
Right.
90 degrees is cutting it in half again, making it quarters.
Right. But I
So
that's true, but I mean like in a job interview, like what like like yeah, but it's good to know, but the thing is that like it doesn't appear in our life once we exit the schooling system not that often, but of course it's good like 5.
okay, okay. If I was employing somebody in a restaurant
Mhm.
and they had to
Right.
deal with portions and a bit
Ah,
of cooking and dealing out and serving things up, I'd
right.
want them to understand fractions. If I was dealing with
Right.
somebody in a shop and we were a dress shop and they were selling materials, I'd want them to understand fractions. If I was dealing with somebody in retail and we were selling any commodity that had to be measured, I'd want them to understand fractions. So,
Ah,
so
yeah.
fractions are a basic fundamental skill that everybody really should have. And
That's true.
back in John Taylor Gatto's time,
Right.
they had that. And
Right.
that understanding, um, very few people have. Very few
Yeah.
adults, and then adults say, "Well, I don't need that thing because where in life do I need to solve a quadratic equation?" Well, that's quadratic equation. That's year 10 work. Most people are at year 5. They're not even halfway there. And year 5, remember, you don't really start doing maths until year 3. So it's 3, 4, 5. It's the third year that students start learning maths. They should have the
Right.
basic understanding of doing the 4 operations with fractions.
Okay.
The
Fair
first
enough.
year, the first year is adding and subtracting. The second year you add multiplication. In the third year you add division, and
Right.
you add fractions.
Uh, but let me ask,
So that's the 3 stages.
do you also know a big factor in people's learning is if they come from like a family that's in poverty or a family that's like well off, which can
Yeah,
affect everything, nutrition, mental health, and if they come like from a family that has a single mother instead of the two uh, uh, parents married. Did you know that they did an experiment on the farmers, and they said one farmers like had their harvest and had their crops and everything worked out fine, and the other farmer like they only had like 1/3. Let's go back with fractions. Which farmer do you think their IQ was higher?
I don't think IQ is that important
Right,
when you're talking about a language, a basic language like mathematics.
right.
Um,
Yeah,
it's
but I'm
this is
making
the
a point
basics.
about a scarcity. So did you know that? But which no, but I'm just asking which IQ do you think was the higher IQ between those two farmers?
Give me more information.
Oh, like well, one of them had less crops, like very less crops, and one of them had way more to feed himself and his family. So
Yeah,
which
but
IQ?
what was the reason?
It,
What
wa-
would
it,
the
wa-
reason?
it, it was an experiment that they did
What's the experiment? The
to
experiment was
to figure out IQs, to figure out what how scarcity affects people's intelligence quotient?
Scarcity of what?
Scarcity of anything, of money, of
Lack
crops,
of
of
food. Lack of food. Like, for
yeah,
example, the baby was starving while they grew up, so they were malnourished. That
right,
affected their brain development, so they were less intelligent. Of course,
right,
that's
something like that. Yeah, but I'm talking about scarcity. Just
scarcity meaning starvation.
right, or just lack of money to pay your bills.
Well, lack of money to pay your bills. If you're in a, if provided you've got your basics covered, you're not
Right.
starving,
Yeah.
um, and you're more desperate, you're more likely to be thinking. So
Yes.
harshness and desperation generates more intelligence.
Harsh.
So that's why, for example, that's why humanity developed their intelligence in the northern hemisphere, or we're on the northern hemisphere, closer to the poles. So the white races who were in more harsher, colder environments with snow in winter had to be more intelligent, use delayed gratification to survive. Whereas the races that evolved around the equator, where they had food all the time and plentiful, they didn't have to do that. Didn't need to be as intelligent to survive. So
Uh,
intelligent, scarcity um, over a long period of time in evolutionary terms has made the human race more intelligent, bigger brains, and
hmm.
all of that.
Well, the
Is that what you think?
well, actually, that's the farmer who had less. Actually, his IQ dropped uh, by 13 points. Yeah, so scarcity because you're using up mental bandwidth when you are in a position of scarcity. Because if you're concentrating on getting to a meeting on time and running to the car and starting the engine, and someone asks you like a quadratic equation, and you're using up mental bandwidth, and you're thinking about like your bills to pay, and you're going to get a divorce soon and all this stuff, the last thing on your mind is what homework do I have to get done, or the test that I'm going to fit like get in college, when all this other stuff about your family and about your job and about next month's rent payment is due is going on in your head when you're either going to school or going to university. So that uses up mental bandwidth. So,
You're not making any sense to my understanding of IQ.
oh, well,
The IQ is genetic. IQ is genetic, and you are born with a certain IQ, and that doesn't change very much. If you
oh,
work and study hard, you can get smarter, but in an IQ test, it will not change much.
oh,
Maybe
okay,
plus or minus.
okay.
You can damage your IQ. For example, excessive alcohol consumption or dope can destroy brain cells, and you'll definitely decrease your IQ. But that's medically decreasing it.
Ah, got it.
You can't take to make yourself smarter though. So
So,
IQ does not change. But
ah,
for example, things like inbreeding, if you keep marrying your cousins and inbreeding, the genetics decreases the IQ. If you intermingle, for example, when you have Anglos breeding with Asians and so forth, quite often the hybrid is a stronger individual than the same with plants. You get hybrids. So if you have the more diverse people breeding, the combinations of genes, you get the best from each side, and you end up with a higher level.
ah,
And also selective breeding. Like the Jews are
interesting.
more intelligent. Like the Asanachi Jews are the most intelligent IQ wise. And the
Yes.
reason for that is over about 700 years of persecution, the Jews have valued intelligence as the number one thing. And the rabbis have typically been the smartest people in the Jewish community, and they have had more children. And the ones that aren't as smart are less likely to find a mate, and they can't afford to have as many children.
Ah,
Whereas
I see.
the aggressive, violent people who aren't as smart, thugs, rape and pillage and have more babies. So the IQ level goes down in the violent society. And if you listen to Jordan Peterson's IQ stuff?
Not yet.
You need to.
I,
If you're going to talk about IQ, you've got to actually
right.
understand IQ. And the media stuff on IQ, the social sciences stuff, lie about it.
Oh, okay. So
They
I don't
lie
know,
about it.
but then they said one of the farmers' IQ went down by. They said, but going down by 13 points is one standard deviation. So maybe,
Yes. To do that, he would have been addicted to low quality moonshine. He would
oh,
have been
okay.
killing brain cells because an IQ test,
Got it, got it.
unbelievable.
Maybe I can send that study over to you, and you can see if it was peer reviewed. But
Yeah.
that's just what I saw on a presidential candidate was talking about that study, and he's a Silicon Valley guy, but I'll take a look at that.
A Democrat, a Democrat,
Yeah.
a Democrat candidate.
so
Okay, say
so
no more.
I'll see if that's possible because they said that the mindset of scarcity lowers a person's ability to think and to go
Oh
do.
yeah, yeah. If, yeah, you've got a cold.
It's
You've
okay.
if if you're under stress, if you're
Hmm.
stressed, you're not going to be thinking as well. But that is like if you've got a mental disease or a mental disorder, your thinking is going to be hampered. If you've got a program running in your head, which depression and all those sorts of things, programs running in your head, your thinking is going to be mentally impaired. But
Right.
that has nothing to do with IQ.
Okay.
An IQ test is matching blocks and solving problems that are dispassionate. And IQ is an incredibly reliable measure.
Mm.
Um, the IQ, they set up 10,000 questions and they pick 100 questions at random, and the deviation between groups of people taking different tests out of these 10,000 questions is less than
Right.
2%. So a group of people will have the same spread on multiple tests. So, you know, the difference is 2.5% error rate. They just keep getting the same results over periods of years. And
Uh.
for a person to move more than 5 points over their lifetime, now, if you're testing thinking skills, if they don't know the trivium, well, they can't think logically. If they haven't been taught how to think, doesn't matter how
Hmm.
intelligent they are. There's a lot of very intelligent people with PhDs in universities who think carbon dioxide is pollution.
Right. It's just naturally
There's
what comes out of us. It
yeah,
from the plants get it in and we breathe it out. It's a cycle. We breathe it
yeah.
out, it goes into the plants, they give us oxygen, and the carbon dioxide comes out, and it's just, yeah. That's
We've had unprecedented warming recently. A tenth of a degree, and maybe a tenth of a degree in the last 10 years. That's 100th degree per year. Yeah,
right.
that's something to worry about. A hundredth of
Yeah.
a degree per year.
Well, I'm more concerned about global dumbing down.
Well, we've all seen the movie Idiocracy, I assume.
Yes, yes. And I
Uh,
think like aren't these schools just seem like they're a breeding ground for all sorts of stressors, all sorts of places where instead of like you get a kid or you get a teacher that comes in with some kind of emotional or psychological problem and maybe the schools just make it worse, exacerbate it. They don't alleviate it.
look, yeah, look. Um, the whole focus of the system is to blame the teacher for everything, and the teacher is the least. Maybe I'm biased, but I'll tell you, and I can justify it. The teacher is the last person in the chain with the least authority, and he's the person that's going to get kicked um, for everything that's going bad and wrong in schools. Right?
Hmm.
It'd be for any time a teacher has done something that has caused a problem, there'd be 10,000 times where students and parents and administrators have done the wrong thing. So
Hmm.
the events of teachers doing the wrong thing are so minuscule that you can discount them. That they just don't have.
I see.
It's not a teacher. A teacher cannot. A teacher's going to get sacked for doing the right thing. A teacher's going to get sacked because somebody doesn't like them, because a student's made up something. So teachers have got no authority, no power, no ability, and the ones that get by and actually survive, if they've been in the school for a few years, they are good.
Right. But I've also seen some instances of like teachers bullying students, but that's mostly in the States. But yeah.
Well, a teacher, if a teacher's bullying students, that teacher would not just be a teacher. They would be an administrator, a head of department,
Yeah.
a vice principal, a principal. They're not just a teacher. Once they become an administrator, they might be teacher administrators, but they're not just a teacher. They've got power.
Got it. I see. So it's a whole like corrupt hierarchy in there.
So an administrator is not a teacher.
Got it.
A teacher is somebody whose only job is teaching students.
Got it.
Now, in the schooling system in Australia, I did some stats in Western Australia, where it's the largest employer, and out of the budget and the whole system, to run a school, right, you've got overheads, administrators, building, power, water, computers, electricity, all that sort of stuff. But basically, it's all about teachers teaching students. So your biggest cost is teachers, employing teachers. Out of the whole budget, it's less than 15% of the budget goes into paying teachers' wages. So 85% goes into overheads at administration.
Right. And is there just like this bloated bureaucracy everywhere?
Well, 120 years ago, when you had in America and same here, you had your single teacher schoolrooms. We had 50 kids in a classroom, and they usually were from grade 1 up to about grade 8 or 10 when they left. So you'd have 50 kids and you have one teacher. Back then, 85% of the cost of running a school was paying the teachers' wages. 15% was the overheads. They've reversed it. And back then, you had every student could do fractions in their head by the time they were 9 years old. Every single student. 99%. Now, you've got 10%. You can do it by year 10.
Right, yeah.
And the costs are reversed. So we've got a new government coming in, and the structure of Australia is we've got 7 states. So we've got the federal, and then we've got the federal government, state governments, then we've got local government. So you've got the same structure, but you're a lot bigger. Because the whole total is 25 million people. But they're about to spend another 30 billion, billion? I can't remember. Billions, I think, dollars. And they're duplicating everything at the federal level. So they're going to run principal training colleges federally, which they've already got at the state level. And so they're spending all this money to set up the bureaucracy so that the states run the education system, and they get a bit of funding from federal. So it's about half and half the funding. But because it's a federal election, they're adding all this level of bureaucracy to the system because the system's failing and it's not working.
Right. Like has the cost of college in Australia also skyrocketed as they have in the United States?
Yeah, university fees have come in and you've got student debts. Nowhere near as bad as the States, but they keep going up and up each year.
Yeah, but the what is it? The costs go up, but does the quality go up?
Oh well, we haven't even discussed that yet. What's happening with the quality? To survive in teaching now, you have to be a good teacher.
Right.
Has
air quotes
results.
Right.
Good results.
So that's code for what the state wants.
Have external marking.
I said.
Well, no, you basically pass all your students. Doesn't matter if they've learned anything or done the work. You find a way to pass everybody in your class. Don't fail anybody. Get everybody 40%.
So it's all like a meat grinder.
No, yeah. you let them. You just give them a higher mark.
Right.
They hand
Well,
in the maths test, they've done no problems. They've got 0 for the maths test. You just put a 4 in front of the 0 and put that in the record.
hmm.
And the same at university. The university lecturers, they get rated at the end of their course by their students. And if they fail a student, they get a bad rating. They get sacked.
Mm, I see. That's something else. And how do they connect these students with work, either in these schools or the universities? Does it work like?
Look, the good ones, there are good universities that
Hmm.
um, that are providing people specific tasks. IT industry, um, engineering, medicine. They actually have to actually meet standards. If you graduate a doctor who's an idiot, he'll kill too many people.
Hmm.
The doctor can't be that much of an idiot, but he's still got
Right.
to toe the line and do what he's told.
Hmm.
So you can't have a doctor who says vaccinations might be a problem. They can't ask that question. They can't ask that question. Not allowed.
Right.
So
How
they've got to
how about
be obedient and clever.
how about this one? Is it legal for teachers or administrators to hit kids in Australia anywhere?
Not at all. Not at all. It
Okay.
hasn't been for 20 plus years.
Okay, because in some states here it is,
Yeah.
which was a shock to me when I found out like how some southern states are living in the medieval times. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
If you
Yeah.
want to.
Yeah.
When I first started teaching, we were allowed to cane them in the
Right.
1980s. Caning was allowed. I was at the
Mhm.
grammar school and kids got caned. I
Mhm.
certainly got caned when I was a student,
Mm. I see.
and I didn't have a problem with it. It was
Oh,
always
okay.
I was always innocent. I can confirm I
You were
never
fr- you were framed and then you were caned.
I was framed and caned. Yes.
Right. So that's something. And but that so the whole dynamic has changed. So back then a teacher could like be mean to a student and actually like do these things.
Define the mean.
Right. No, no, no,
Define
not me, but like I don't know, make a student's life, I don't know, really sing or maybe pick on a student. I don't know, or maybe that never happens. I don't know
Look,
because you
I listen. I did that frequently. A lot of my students thought I was being mean to them because I would make them accountable. I'd hold them accountable.
right.
I'd ask them difficult questions. I'd point out to them that the reason you have not passed this test is because you haven't done enough work. You haven't actually sat down and worked on doing enough problems. So your result is a fair result given the amount of effort you've put in. Or if you paid attention and listened, you have a bit of a chance of learning.
No.
And they don't like hearing that stuff, and that is being mean. And when
Oh.
I had authority, I would keep them in and give them a detention.
Oh no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like just bothering them for no apparent reason or like you said you said you were innocent when you got caned. So does that mean that they just thought you was it another student who did something wrong and you were the one who got the
Look,
rap?
sometimes,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, you can't dob in and say somebody else did it. So if they thought you did it, and I say no, it wasn't
Uh,
me. Well, who was it? And you
right.
can't.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Exactly.
You didn't know.
I'm talking about and
You're
you
quite
were
sweet.
right, exactly, and you were can I'm talking about stuff like that or stuff like maybe the teacher just comes into school in a bad mood and doesn't explain the subject and just expects like the kids to know or stuff like that. But like I'm like my personal schooling experience when like I had one teacher who like regularly gave like one history project after another history project and announced their bad mood to the entire class and like always complained about their job in class and it's like okay but I'm pretty sure you didn't do that. You just held your kids accountable because the teachers should be held accountable for teaching and the students should be held accountable for learning. So that's both sides. But if either one of those sides kind of backs away from that, then you have a dysfunctional classroom. No, but
Relationships do break down, and
right,
yeah, you don't. You've got, you know, sometimes you're dealing with 150 students as a high school.
150 students in one room.
No, no,
Oh,
over a
okay,
week. Over a week.
okay, every week.
They,
Okay,
they, they do maths, for 1 hour every day. So you'll have 5 classes a day, and in that you can have 5 times 30, 5 classes of 30. You might have 150 different students in one day,
I see.
and and um, if for example, I've explained how to add a half plus a third,
Mm-hmm.
and I
Five,
give
six.
and they've then got to do the problem themselves, or they get a different version of the problem um, where I give them 6 blocks and tell them to show me in blocks how I'd add a half to a third, and they've got to work out that out of those blocks, 3 of those blocks is a half. And they say, "How do you do that?" I don't know what you mean. I say, "Well, work it out." Now, if I don't know how to do it, they haven't learned.
Mm-hmm,
I say,
mm-hmm.
"Well, work on it. You can work it out yourself."
Right.
And I give them time to work it out themselves. But most students in the classes I've dealt with do not like that response. They want
Got
to be
it.
sure how to do everything.
Right.
Now, in maths, every time I show a student how to do something, they haven't learned. They're not learning. They're just watching.
Right. They're
They,
they're just repeating or something like that.
yeah,
Well, I mean that's how I felt when I was in school. I was just memorizing and regurgitating,
yeah.
and
Well,
that's that's
that's
that's
in
not learning.
but in most of the history and geography and even biology and a lot of the chemistry, it
Right.
is just that.
Right,
It's
exactly.
memorizing and regurgitating. It's
Right.
memorization.
Yeah, and it's why like we have Google, we have like we have our phones in our pocket now. We can just look it up. You know what I mean? It's like we don't get like you said we don't get to think. So talk about like the most the people who are above you and you went to them with all these problems. They basically just persecuted you or that's what I've heard or what. They were probably in on it, wasn't it? That was you.
Um, cough, cough.
It's all right.
It's complex and it'll take an hour to explain it, so it's probably not enough time to go through that here. I've got to go
Right.
and start doing something.
Okay. That's
Maybe we
fine.
should end off with one and do another interview sometime else.
Oh, okay. So just talk about how you were canned. Uh, just
I was I made the stupid move of reporting my deputies for not doing their job.
mhm,
The process is called whistleblowing,
mhm,
and there's a process to go along with that called whistleblower gaslighting, which is well documented if you Google it.
mhm.
And I wasn't aware of what was going on, and over a 12-month process, they proved that I couldn't teach mathematics,
So
which
they were
is,
trying to drive you crazy. That's basically what gaslighting means. They're
yeah,
trying
and
to pretend that you were doing things you weren't doing, and
yeah,
they were doing things that they weren't doing to just kind of fabricate some things. And you also told me before the interview that you wanted to teach these kids how to reason and to think, and
yeah,
they looked at that as a violation of school policy.
yeah. That's not in the curriculum. Why are you trying to teach critical thinking? That's not in the curriculum.
Right. So you can say what's happening, but you can never let them know why it's happening. And I think that's the best way that I looked at it. George Carlin said it the best. They want people that are just smart enough to go into the factories and pull the levers and deal with all the switches, but just dumb enough to never question why they're doing it. S- smart enough to do it, but never to question why.
oh look, there's some really, really clever people coming out of the schooling system.
Hmm.
Some of the technology developments in software and hardware and things that are being built, the people are geniuses, but they're
Hmm.
in a narrow area
Right.
and they can't actually see what's happening in the real world.
Right. So they may be the genius in the science and technology and the creation of it,
Yeah.
but but if it's being used for diabolical purposes, they'll never question that part. Like what is this
Oh no.
science exactly? So they don't have a big picture thinking. It's very myopic.
Yeah, they might have invented this incredibly clever explosive called something like nanotechnological thermite, and
TNT.
they might have planted it on the inside of the elevator shafts of the 9/11 building, and not even questioned what the way they were doing it, or think it had
Oh.
anything to do with the planes blowing over the building.
Wow, that's getting into some stuff, but yeah, let's
Just,
keep that for another interview. But yeah, I'm just saying that like we said, they're taking this critical thinking away for a reason. I mean, it's harder to manage people who can ask why, because when they ask why, they might question the people who are at the top, and the people at the top aren't going to take too kindly for that. So I think it's just better to get them when they're young, having them not ask why, so they're more manageable. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
oh,
Okay.
you know, with how super skilled people come, they devote so much time to becoming an expert in their field, and they get a lot of credit, 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 and
Right.
fame and fortune from their skill. And
Yes.
if they ever start to look at the site, work out they actually might be being used for some evil purpose, they don't want to know about that.
Hmm.
It gets into this. They have this religious belief that what they're doing is right, and if something bad is happening with that, well, that's somebody else's fault, not mine. So they can keep doing and working for
Right,
trouble.
right. They
Yeah,
can be the greatest inventor or scientist, but at the same time, they're sheep, because they
yeah,
don't question why they're inventing and creating and what it's being used for. They create what it is, but then let it go and not know what it's being used for. And I think that's the best part. That's creating a, like you said, TNT. You create something that hurts people and kills people, but you're like, I'm just responsible for creating. What happens after that? That's in the hands of my higher ups.
yeah.
Yeah, I think
Anyway,
that's
I've got to
a
go now.
great
I've got to do something else.
perfect, excellent.
Um,
It's been great, Colin.
yeah,
Like seeing it from your point of view.
yeah, sure.
That's why I had this interview. Okay.
Anyway,
I'll
I'd love a copy of the MP4s too. So if you want to store it somewhere, give me a link so I can download it.
I will. I will. I'll be on the way of doing that right after I edit this. All right, perfect. I'll see you in the
Okay,
course.
thanks.
I'll see you in autonomy.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.